Hello students, I'm Farhan Anam, your online tutor for economics. Um, Today I will be discussing the first chapter of the book Economics written by Rob Jones. And yeah, let's see what's in it. This chapter basically speaks about demand and supply and the market system. Okay, so before getting into the details, let us first understand what is a market. Okay, traditionally, what we know about market, what we think about the word market is basically a place or a shopping place where people go buy and sell things. This used to be the traditional concept of market. But in business and economics, market can be invisible too. Okay, it does not have to be a physical place. Okay, it can be something which is not visible to both buyers and sellers. So basically, a market is a phenomenon, a means where there is an existence of a product or service that can be sold and bought, you know and basically there can be many buyers and many sellers, or few buyers or few sellers. Okay, or even many buyers and only one seller. Okay, so, and it does not have to be a physical place. For example, okay, if we take a car market as a marketplace, then you would go to a showroom or a second-hand car uh, place, from where you choose your car and you buy it. Or you can go to a TV showroom, you choose a TV and buy it. So that's basically a physical market. But at the same time, there are markets. We know that there are markets. Okay, there are buyers for the product and there are sellers for the product, but it does not necessarily is located in a particular place. Okay, so for example, we know that there is a demand for foreign currency. For example, the dollar. Okay, suppose you have a $100 note. Okay, and there is there must be a buyer for it. I mean, you can sell this $100 note. There is a market for it. So there is a market, which means there are buyers. Okay, and in this case, you are the seller. So there is a market for this product, which is $100 in this case, and you could go somewhere, find a buyer, and you can sell it to that buyer. Okay, because that there are buyers out there to buy it from you. So all you need is to find out that buyer. Okay, now there is no fixed place. Okay, but there is certain need of this currency. So this is another example of invisible market. Okay, so what is a market system then? Okay, sometimes markets are interconnected. Okay, many markets together make a system. For example, um, during Eid al-Adha, okay, you have a market for cows. There's buyers, there are sellers, and there are specific places. Okay, but at the same time, some other markets also grow or comes into the picture. For example, transport market, because uh, the, the cattle farmers, they're bringing in the cattle through different transports like trucks, tractors. Okay, so they're heavily dependent on the transportation system as well. So there is a market for transport as well. Okay, so, and there's another market for cattle feeds. As long as they're in the marketplace, these domestic animals, these cows and cattle, they do need food. So there's another market for cattle feed. Okay, so these three markets are connected and makes a market system. Okay, through which you basically finally get the cow or the goat. Okay, so this is a market system. So there's buyers and sellers, but within these there are other markets who are basically, or other service providers who are basically providing services to these farmers. Now, in a market system or in a market, there's something called price determination. Okay, it's very important, because how will you decide? How will you know that how much is this cow or this TV or this car is going to cost you? As a seller, how would you know that what should be the price you're going to sell it? And as a buyer, how would you know what is the price you should buy it for? Okay, so it all depends on the type of market. Which is it a growing market? Are there many sellers or are there many buyers? Okay, so for example, think of something. Say you have something. Okay, say a product. Say you have a packet of cigarette. Okay, say you have a packet of Benson and Hedges or Gold Leaf or any other brand. Okay, Philip Morris. Okay, but right now you live, or you are located in such a place where almost there are no smokers. Most of the people are non-smokers. You know. So in this case, you have very few buyers. Maybe one or two people smoke. Okay, and there are very few buyers. Okay, and maybe like you, there are some other people who also have a packet of cigarette. All of them want to sell it, but there are very few buyers. So in this case, you have to bring down the price, otherwise the buyers won't buy. Okay, and you don't have much options. So this is a situation where when you have less demand for the product, you have less buyers, but you have more supplies. That means you have more sellers than you have buyers. So in this case, your price goes down. Okay, so this determines the price of the product or service that you are going to sell. Okay, think of the opposite. Say you have, maybe you or a couple of people have one packet of cigarettes each. Say three people have only three people are selling cigarettes, and there are about 10 buyers. Okay, so and 10 buyers. So this means not all buyers are going to get it. Only 3 buyers are going to get it. Okay, now which buyers are going to get it? So it depends who is going to pay how much, because as a seller that there are 10 buyers, there are more or many buyers out there to buy your product, but the supply is less. That means only 3 of you are selling it. Okay, so that means you have the control over the supply, and buyers don't have control over the supply. So you can raise the price now because you have options. You have 10 buyers. Okay, you have many buyers. If someone doesn't buy, someone else will come and buy it. Okay, so if a buyer wants this packet of cigarette, he has to increase his budget and buy at a premium price, because the supply is very less. So in this case, the price is determined by short of supply. Okay, and in this case the product price would be higher because there is very few of it available. So this is the price determination, which is basically determined by the demand and supply of the product. My first example was the demand, that you have more supply of cigarettes than you have demand for it. Okay, you had very few buyers, so therefore you had less demand but more supply. In this case, your price would be lower because you don't have much buyer to buy it. So the second example is, as I said, is basically you have less supply and more demands. Okay, so you have more buyers and less sellers. In this case, your price would be the price of the product would be higher because it is less available. Okay. Now there is one last issue in this chapter, which is called resource mobilization. Okay, or resource allocation. So you can simply think of it, because when you have a market where uh, there are high demand of a product, that means the market is growing and people are looking for the product. Obviously, the producers or the sellers or the manufacturers or the investors, they are going to allocate more resource in the production, okay, so that they can gain more profit from it. Okay, because you have many buyers in the market for a certain product, so definitely you are going to produce that product or service, because it will give you more return. So if you have uh, some resources where like you have two different markets, where one market is there's very few demand and one market has many demand. Obviously you're going to put most of your resource, your money, everything in the market where you have more demands. Okay, so you're going to sell the product that has more needs and more demands. So similarly, if you are in a market where uh, customers are withdrawing themselves, the demands are going down, and there are too many competitors, and not much demand. So then eventually you will be withdrawing your resources and put that resource into somewhere else where you have more promising market, okay, or you have more prospects. So this is how you also, investors and producers, allocate resources. Okay, so that's it for the first chapter of this book, and my next lecture would be on the second chapter, which is demand and supply curve. Okay, till then, goodbye.